just into our studios, Andrew McCutchen remains really good at baseball. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Pirates. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or hockey, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Penguins in the same place that you found this. Pirates 5, Cubs 3. Really nice overall W for the club last night at Wrigley Field. Not just in Cutch getting the winning home run, not just Brian Reynolds with a 3-run shot to tie it after Chicago had taken a 3-0 lead, but maybe even more so that Jared Jones got back on his figurative horse and looked a lot more like the early season Jones that had everyone all excited. He wasn't great, 6 1/3 innings, 3 runs, but he was plenty good enough, and really with him, you just want to see him finish strong after having had the lat injury cost him a third of the season. But I want to talk about Cutch today. I want to talk about his future. And yes, he's got a future, because when you're, depending on your metric, either the 7th best or the 10th best at what you do in baseball, meaning being a DH, then you're still playing, no matter what your age is. Cutch is 37. He'll, of course, be 38 next season. But the home run last night was his 18th. His OPS is at 759. Those are both third best on this team behind Reynolds and O'Neal Cruz, and not far behind either one of them. That's not some sentimental signing. That's not like just ushering Cutch into the sunset or something. Over the weekend in Cleveland, I spent a pretty good amount of time with him, and I wrote a column about how the decision to return for 2025 should be his and his alone. I did this, of course, only after he told me that he does in fact want to return for 2025. And I did this within the context that Ben Cherington's not really in the position to be calling anybody's shots, let alone someone like Cutch, who means only about a gazillion times more to the city than Cherington or anyone in this front office. 2 springs ago, when Cutch returned, I was walking off a field in Bradenton with both Cutch and Bob Nutting. Just a coincidence. And it was there that it became really clear that the decision for Cutch to come back was initially his and his alone, but that he directly approached Nutting. That's how this is going to happen. It's not going to have anything to do with Cherington, whether he is or is not the GM next year. And that's as it should be. But when I wrote this column, I got a lot of pushback, in large part because, you know, he's part of this, and it's time to turn the page, and people are just in a sour mood about the team, I think, more than they are about him. And anything and anybody that's new or even just looks new would be preferable to almost anybody who's already here. And I kind of get that, and I kind of expected it, to be honest. In other words, you know, Joey Bart good, Cutch bad. Why? Bart's new. Same numbers. Not the same career trajectory, obviously. Bart ideally would be around for a long time, and I get that as well. It's just everyone's kind of got slumped shoulders right now. And there were a few who attempted to make the argument that Cutch was actually the worst DH in baseball, because if you looked at all of the various full-time DHs, and that would mean anybody who's qualified for the batting title in either league, that Cutch ends up 7th out of 7. The argument that they made was that in the ideal model, the Pirates would have players DHing on their days down. So, for example, your DH in Pittsburgh could be days that you give Reynolds a break or Cruz a break, or for that matter, Bart a break. He's actually done some of that within the past month. And I can appreciate that. I think that's a really nice objective. It's a nice goal to set. They're nowhere near that. They just aren't. How you can put that forth while looking at a daily basis at the bottom half of this order is beyond me. The 7, 8, and 9 that Derek Shelton writes up should come with a laughing track. And sure, part of that's a bad decision on management's part, meaning running Jared Triolo out there every day makes no sense. You've got Nick York and a couple other people in the minors who maybe would be worth a look. These games don't mean anything, so why not? But you are nowhere near having a lineup that's solid enough that you can afford to lose Cutch for 2025. I don't know how much more obvious that can be. So set aside the slumped shoulders and the sadness and the idea that this is some sort of sentimental exercise. He's still a ball player. And if you want to know the truth, his numbers this year should actually be a lot better than they've been, based partly on his having started kind of slowly and based way more on his having been really unlucky. I mean, he has hit some screamers at people all summer long. This is what Cutch had to say last night in Chicago about his 2024 to date.
I mean, I've felt pretty good since probably LA. So I was just trying to maintain that approach, and I've been able to do it. Keeping it as simple as possible. So yeah, it's overall, I felt pretty good just with my approach. Just having to understand that it's going to be some things I may have to fight through with the body, and I may have days that don't feel too good. But how can I maintain a good approach and still be able to get my swing off? I've been able to do that.
That's it. I'm sorry. There's nothing to discuss or debate here. He's your DH for 2025. And that's a good thing. That'd be a good thing if his name was Joe Smith and you just pulled him out of nowhere and nobody'd heard of him. You would happily add him to your roster and to your lineup. When we come back, J1Q. This portion of Daily Shot of Pirates is brought to you by our friends at North Shore Tavern. That's directly across Federal Street from PNC Park. It's home of Steak on a Stone, an eating experience, underscoring the word experience. The steak is brought to you partially cooked on an 800-degree stone, and you do the rest. It's a ton of fun, it's a great meal, and it's a baseball atmosphere like no other in Pittsburgh. North Shore Tavern, right across Federal Street from PNC Park.
It's Gun Storage Check Week. Help prevent unwanted access to your firearms. No one wants their unsecured gun to be used in an accident, a suicide, or a crime. Use lockboxes, safes, and locks to secure your firearms. Learn more at gunstoragecheck.org. That's gunstoragecheck.org. Brought to you by NSSF, the Firearm Industry Trade Association.
Today's J1Q, unsurprisingly, comes in response to yesterday's show and the column that I wrote from Cleveland regarding the Pirates stuffing their clubhouse stalls with 18 non-players and non-coaches, just general staffers. To that, Barry asks, DK, is it fair to say that we know why they're there? It prevents revolt in the clubhouse. You know, Barry, I spent a lot of time on that column and then in turn on other things, including the podcast that emanated from it. And I am here to tell you embarrassingly, really embarrassingly, that never occurred to me until first readers and then listeners brought it up. I swear to you, I feel so stupid. I got all these people saying, oh, great job on this and way to go and great digging. And I put forth in the piece and in yesterday's episode here all kinds of reasons for why that. And that never dawned on me because I guess I'm just a dope or something. But it makes more sense than anything I wrote or spoke. If I was running an operation that was all about sustaining my processes into eternity and making sure that I tiptoe around any landmines along the way. One of the biggest landmines you can encounter is having your players start, publicly complaining or even outright mouthing off. And that stuff begins, in my experience from the past, with the Pirates and other teams, with players congregating and conversing among themselves about this guy or this thing that they don't like or that thing they don't like. And then it eventually, sooner or later, probably after some lousy loss, blows up. Well, great way to mitigate that, because not only do they have these 18 people in that clubhouse who don't belong there, although I'm told it was reduced to just a handful yesterday at Wrigley Field, despite the same exact traveling entourage. But they're also, and this point I did make, interspersed, meaning they're not all just in one part of the clubhouse. It's like 2 players, random dude. Another 2 players, random dude. They're all over. And if I was going along with your thinking, meaning I'm Ben Cherington and I'm going by your approach here, Barry, that's exactly what I would do. It's exactly what I would do. And look, I'm not saying you're right, but I'm saying I absolutely should have thought of it and included it as a possibility. I appreciate the question. I appreciate all, my goodness, of the feedback yesterday to both the written and spoken versions of this piece. If there's one thing I know for certain, it's that all of you who say, that's it, I'm out, I quit, I'm done with this, you're all lying to yourselves. You really are. I appreciate you anyway. I appreciate you being here, and we will, in fact, have another episode of this tomorrow.